So last week we learned that Mayor Pete's consulting work at McKinsey included, drumroll, disaster capitalism, which if you don't know is a process whereby capitalist ghouls exploit recently destroyed countries that were usually devastated either by war or natural disasters. That was part of Pete Buttigieg's resume at McKinsey. Yeah. Now, on top of that, he did consulting work for private insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, and his work may have directly led to the loss of thousands of jobs, but he doubts that that were the case. And on top of that, he also did consulting work for the EPA and USPS, seemingly benign consulting work. I wasn't too concerned with that. Although when I looked at his resume, for McKinsey, even I was being a little bit too kind because that work that he did, at least for the USPS, it wasn't benign. He was part of a team at McKinsey that was literally trying to privatize the U.S. Postal Service. So, the more that you learn about Mayor Pete, the less redeeming qualities there are. He is functionally a Republican, or was functionally a Republican at least, if we want to be a little bit more charitable, a log cabin Republican, and the man is a ghoul. Now, on top of that, he was recently shamed into releasing the list of bundlers because, whenever you hold these private fundraisers with really rich people in the Hamptons, usually you release a list for transparency's sake, but Pete Buttigieg stopped updating that list as of, I think it was April, and he was recently shamed into being more transparent. And one of the individuals who is holding fundraisers for him includes Netflix CEO Reed Hastings. Now, I'm in favor of streaming services. I have a subscription to Netflix, but part of the reason why, ideally, you want to avoid having Reed Hastings host a fundraiser for you is because the man has funneled money into causes that lead to charter schools, the privatization of education. Now, what's interesting to me is that Mayor Pete claims to be against charter schools. He claims to be against school voucher programs, but yet, it's a little bit of a contradiction that he's allowing someone who advocates boldly so for charter schools to host a private fundraiser for him. The question is, why? Now, I would argue that it's probably because Pete actually does support charter schools, or maybe he's ambivalent, he doesn't really care about the issue, and he just wants to get a lot of money. Either way, it's not a good look. If you're going to talk the talk, we expect you to walk the walk. But he's not doing that, and the media hasn't questioned him on this. But thankfully, an organizer at a recent event decided to call him out. And as usual, Pete Buttigieg was not happy with the prospect of being challenged, and he actually got a little bit testy. This turned into kind of a heated exchange where he accused the individual asking him this question of trying to debate him. It got weird. Nonetheless, take a look.
There's funding protesters that are right outside of here today. He's the CEO of Netflix. Reed Hastings has also funded private charter schools. You say you're against vouchers, you say you're against private charter schools, but yet on Monday, you're going to be at a fundraiser in Palo Alto, where he's going to be one of the hosts. In the labor movement, there's a saying, you can only be on one side or the other. Will you keep Reed Hastings, who's fought the teachers' unions, as a host on that fundraiser on Monday? Or will you drop him from the list?
So I'm very clear where I stand on these issues. There are 700,000 donors to my campaign. Mm-hmm. Some of them may disagree with me on some of those issues, but my stance will not change, including my support for teachers and my support for labor.
So you'll keep him as a host. Wait, one question. Will you keep him as a host on the fundraiser, Reed Hastings? It's a yes or no question.
I have no plans to make a change there. The fundamental fact of where I stand in my support for labor.
But wouldn't some people say that's a sign that you're not truly committed to organized labor and you're just willing to say anything?
I will say where I stand.
Then why not drop Reed Hastings from the fundraiser?
Are you asking me a question or are you debating me?
No, I'm trying to get you to answer the question.
Yeah, sure. So the answer to the question is that my position is clear and it will not change even if somebody who supports my campaign disagrees with me on certain issues.
So he predictably tried to do the slimy, politician dodge where you don't answer the question, you try to obfuscate and whatnot. And that organizer, thankfully, was trying to hold his feet to the fire and get him to answer the question. It was a yes or no question, but he wouldn't answer it. And I couldn't help but think while watching this, why should we have to rely on organizers at these events to do the job of the media? Imagine if we had an adversarial mainstream media that actually challenged people in power or people seeking power. We wouldn't have to do this, but because the media isn't doing its job, since they love Mayor Pete, we have to rely on people to hold him accountable. And of course, he doesn't like being held accountable because he seldomly is held accountable. This is someone who is an elitist. He's privileged. So to be questioned, to question his integrity and his morals, he doesn't like that and he gets pissed. But while we're on the subject of talking about Pete Buttigieg and his morals, or lack thereof, and his donors, I want to go over some of the individuals who have been hosting these fundraisers and bundling to his campaign. As Elena Schneider and Maggie Serverns of Politico report, Buttigieg, who has shot from little-known, small-town mayor to become one of the most prolific fundraisers in the Democratic presidential primary, named a list of 113 bundlers, high-dollar donors who have also tapped into their personal networks to raise money for the candidate. The list, released late Friday night, covers everyone who has raised at least $25,000 for the campaign, including several heavyweights in the financial industry. Among them was Hamilton James, executive vice chairman and former president of the private equity giant Blackstone, and his wife Amy, as well as Orrin Kramer, a hedge fund manager and major Democratic fundraiser. New York socialite and philanthropist Agnes Gunn, dubbed the homecoming queen of philanthropy world by the New York Times in a recent profile, is another bundler for Buttigieg. Gunn gave more than $400,000 to efforts supporting Hillary Clinton in 2016. Another supporter helping Buttigieg, Adam Barth, is a Houston-based partner at McKinsey & Co., the management consulting firm where Buttigieg once worked. Barth does not have any significant history donating to federal campaigns, according to campaign finance records. So, Wall Street executives, hedge fund managers, and on top of that, a lot of people, more so than what I read to you, who contributed to Hillary Clinton in 2016. And these bundlers don't even take into account all of the money he received from the health insurance industry. So this individual is a hollow, vapid person who doesn't stand for anything. He's an empty suit, and he doesn't actually have a political ideology. His ideology will be what is dictated by his donors, which is evidenced by the fact that he previously supported Medicare for All and then started taking money from the health industry, and all of a sudden, he no longer supports Medicare for All. Now, don't question him on that, because if you call him out, then he's going to get testy and he may yell at you. Now, he has been keeping the locations of these private fundraisers anonymous, but that hasn't stopped activists such as Elise Anil, who tracked down these fundraisers and called him out. Now, in response to people protesting his events constantly, he claimed that he shares the same values as the people protesting his events, except you don't share the same values, because if you did, you wouldn't be doing these fundraisers in the first place, which is what they take issue with, Pete. So the man is a fraud, and thankfully, more people are starting to acknowledge that this is not someone who cares about you. He doesn't represent you. He's someone who's just trying to get elected. He's a careerist, and he will take any position that is politically expedient because he wants to do what will help him get elected. Period. End of story. People realize that, which is why he's starting to go down in the polls, and ultimately, I don't think he's going to win.